Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, season surprises so far. We'll talk about some individual surprises at we'll call it 3/4 way of the season, and also some team surprises. We'll also preview Wolves Nuggets tonight. It's all upcoming. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Happy Hump Day and happy Timberwolves game day. After the last couple nights off, the Wolves are in Denver, the Mile High City, to take on the Nuggets tonight on ESPN. We will preview that matchup toward the end of the show. We haven't seen the Nuggets here in 6-7 weeks, and actually only twice to this point this season. So we'll talk about what's going on in the world of Denver, talk about the matchup for tonight's game. But I want to start with surprises at calling it the 3/4 pool of the season, which is about right. I mean, the Wolves have played 66 games. They're playing 82. Yeah, that's about right. We're going to talk about surprises, both individually as a team. If you had said on October 15th or whatever, pick a date right before opening night, this would be the case on March 11th, would you be surprised, yes or no? Pretty simple premise. But it's interesting when you take a half step back and you think about it. So I want to do that today. We'll do that for the first couple segments before we preview Wolves Nuggets. A big thank you here off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A reminder, you can subscribe for the Locked On Wolves daily newsletter at LockedOnDaily.com. It's one stop for Ultimate Wolves and NBA coverage delivered right to your inbox every day, Monday through Friday. Subscribe at LockedOnDaily.com. All right. Surprises this season. I've got a list for you, and I want to start with the individual stuff, and then we'll move into some broader kind of team categories. And again, the premise is very simple. If I had said Anthony Edwards would be spending most of the season number one in the league in three-pointers attempted and made, and would be shooting over 40% on the volume he's shooting from outside the arc, if you had told me that on October 15th, I would have been surprised. Maybe mildly so, just because we saw him trending that way. We knew he could shoot. He's got unlimited range, and the way he shot the basketball basically was almost, not really, but almost a three-point specialist with Team USA this past summer in 2024. It really shouldn't be that big of a shock. But if you look at what he's done, the first 3 years of his career leading into the first 4 years of his career leading into this, I mean, he had never shot more than 8.5 threes a game. Last season, he shot, actually, his three-point rate had gone down the last couple of years. He only attempted 6.7 threes per game last season. The three-point rate had been going down for 3 consecutive seasons. And now this season, 49.5% of his shots are coming from outside the arc. It's basically a 50-50 split, 10 three-pointers per game, and he's making 40.6%. Yes, that percentage has come down slightly of late. I believe he's still second in the league in both makes and attempts next to former teammate Malik Beasley. But that is a surprising turn of events. I think that's fair to say. I've got it right here. I'm going to confirm where no, he is number one. He passed Beasley. He's back to number one in both makes and attempts. He's number one in makes, 2 ahead of Malik Beasley, number one in attempts, 3 ahead of Steph Curry. Beasley's percentage is nuts. He's actually not even in the top. Oh, wait, I take that back. He is 4th in attempts. Still a crazy percentage for Malik Beasley. And, Ant's not even in the top 20 in three-point percentage, but he's still shooting over 40% on crazy volume that teams have to respect. We know he can shoot it off the dribble better than really anybody in the league. And he's added more catch and shoot opportunities this year. He's making quicker decisions. That is a genuine surprise. I did not expect that. If you told me in early October, Anthony Edwards in mid-March is going to be tops in the league in makes and attempts from outside the arc and be shooting over 40% for 3, I would have been surprised. We'll go with another positive here before I hit a slightly less positive one. Let's talk about Jaden McDaniels' offensive growth. this is to me actually the most surprising one. I could have led with this. I wanted to lead with Ant. But I have been as hard on Jaden McDaniels as anybody. And I said this the other day. I don't want to repeat too much of what I said, but in short, like I thought McDaniels was a little bit overrated as a defender the first year, I would call it 2 seasons in the league. I think the offensive growth has been so slow. Even when they gave him like those summer league opportunities early on, like there just wasn't, it didn't look like he was getting it offensively. Even last season, I mean, he regressed so poorly, or so significantly, I should say, from outside the arc from 2 years ago to last year, that it was like, all right, is he ever going to be a functional offensive player? Well, guess what? He's actually shooting the three at a slightly worse clip, a half percentage point worse than he did last year, but he's been a much more positive offensive player, and it's not particularly close. Well, why? Well, I would say some of it is similar to Ant. He's being more decisive, but he's actually getting into the paint, and he's getting to the free throw line a little bit more often. He's making that weird fall away that he shoots, and he's also got a career high assist rate. We broke this down the other day on the show, but a career high assist rate and a career high usage rate with a career low turnover rate. That's a trifecta that's relatively rare, and actually had it last year. It was his best assist rate, best usage rate, and best turnover rate. That's what we're seeing from Jaden this year. Add on top of that, the offensive rebounding, which is probably the biggest reason, and it has helped with the free throw rate and the proximity of so many of his shots, and has helped offset the struggles from outside the arc. But here over the past, 6-8 weeks or so, really since the start of January, Jaden isn't just simply catching and shooting from the corners. He's taking a beat, surveying the floor. Do I want to shoot this three, or is the defense just wanting me to shoot this three? Should I just take it off the dribble? Are they stashing Chris Paul on me? Are they stashing their worst defender, their point guard, or whoever on me? If so, I'm going to take it to the basket. I'm going to make them pay. If not, and they're going to play off of me expecting that I'm going to take them to the basket, I'm going to shoot the three with confidence. And that's what we're seeing of late for Jaden McDaniels. I didn't pull his 3-point percentage for the last few weeks, but I guarantee you it's much higher than his season percentage of 33%. Last year, he was 33.7%. The year prior, he was just a shade under 40% on similar volume. And, I wouldn't be surprised if that continues to tick upwards ever so slightly, at least better than last year. Maybe he gets to 34% when it's all said and done this year, which is, just a few years ago, that was league average. I mean, it's well below league average now, but like that's a respectable number, right? If you're at 34, 35%, defenses have to at least pay attention to you out there. And that's pretty much where Jaden has been here lately. And overall this season, we're about there. And again, the offensive rebound rate, the overall rebound rate, all of this with the defense being as good as ever. And lately, he's added some other facets to his game. He's functioned more as a rim protector, off-ball rim protector with Rudy out of the lineup the last few weeks. And I think he's going to go back to playing more on the ball now that Gobert's back. But we've seen him show some versatility on both ends of the floor. But to me, the offensive growth is the headline here, is improving in all those categories: offensive rebound rate, total rebound rate, assist rate, steal rate. We didn't even talk about that. Turnover rate, usage rate, all that going in the right direction, with the free throw rate increasing and just being a legit offensive threat. He's not a clear net negative at this point offensively, and he's basically the third option in the starting lineup. The whole thing opens up. I mean, I always kind of laughed when Chris Finch said, I think it was actually 2 years ago, he made a comment like, Jaden McDaniels is the bellwether for the Wolves offense. I thought it was, Chris Finch knows a lot more basketball than me, to be clear. I thought it was kind of a silly thing to say, because Jaden McDaniels is a poor offensive player and has been for the vast majority of his career. But I think if you look at it as like, hey, if he's going well, the offense is going well now. They can play well without him contributing much offensively, because that's what they did for most of the last couple of years. Is they had the offense itself was middling, I guess. I don't know, maybe I'm proving Fitch's point, right? Like last couple of years, it was a middling offense, but they won 56 games with him being the worst offensive player in the rotation, I think. And now this season, he's actually been overall, probably not but like a clearly positive contributor on offense, but lately he absolutely has been. And perhaps not surprisingly, the Wolves now have the 11th ranked offense in the entire NBA. They finished like 17th last year. They're 11th. Don't look now, but one of my bold predictions at the All-Star break was that they would have a top 10 offensive unit and a top 10 defensive unit. They're on the cusp. There are only 4 teams that have that in the NBA. The Wolves are on the cusp of becoming the 5th. This is one of my bold predictions. We won't talk about the other ones right now, but One of them was the Wolves, I think at the time, were like 15th in offense. So getting into the top 10 is a lift and staying there defensively. This season, only Boston, OKC, Denver. Actually, I think there's only 3 teams. The Knicks were, but they've dropped out defensively. Or I'm sorry, that was last year. I looked at last year's list. This year, only OKC, Cleveland, Boston, and Memphis are top 10 in both units. So the Wolves would be the 5th team. Last year, only 4 did it all season long. Boston, OKC, and then Denver and the Knicks. This season, Denver and the Knicks are not there defensively, either of them. So the Wolves would be only the 5th team in the league. And if you said right now who are the top 4 title favorites, I mean, OKC, Cleveland, and Boston would be your top 3. And at the moment, you might say Lakers or I don't know that Memphis is the 4th one, but like they're in the conversation. So that's a pretty significant thing for Minnesota. And I would marry that up with, or I would attribute a lot of that to the improvement that we've seen from Jaden this season as a whole, but especially here of late. All right. I've got 3 more individual things. We'll hit a couple quick team things, I think. Before we talk Wolves Nuggets, we'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Wayfair. Your home should reflect your style, and with Wayfair, it's easier than ever to make that happen. Whether you're looking for a simple refresh or tackling a big home project, Wayfair has everything you need in one place. Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find the perfect piece, no matter your space or budget. From cozy furniture and stylish decor to kitchen essentials and outdoor must-haves, Wayfair has it all, and at prices that fit your budget. You can find the perfect piece for wherever. I talked about this the other day. I got a new rug, my wife and I, new lamp. We're looking for a coffee table to tie everything together in the living room. Wayfair has a ton of stylish options, all at great prices. Too many tabs open in my browser, probably too many while I'm podcasting, and my wife has tons open as well. This is like, we're really digging in on this. And of course, it's about to be patio season. Maybe you're looking for outdoor storage solutions or patio decor. You can find all that at Wayfair as well. It's your go-to. It should be your go-to. It's definitely my go-to for all things home. Head over to wayfair.com and find something that's just your style today. That's Wayfair, WAYFAIR.com, Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by our friends at Intuit TurboTax. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who could do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available TurboTax Live Full Service real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, a couple more individual surprises here in the first 3 quarters of the Wolves season, which I guess some of these things could change down the stretch. But I think we're pretty safe in kind of highlighting these. So talking Ant 3-point volume and accuracy, talking Jaden McDaniels offensive growth. Actually my other 3, well, I've got one more positive and 2 kind of more negative ones. We'll do a negative one now. Rob Dillingham's role, which I say negative, like I don't know, it's kind of neutral. It just depends on your perspective. Rob Dillingham would probably say it's negative. The lack of the Rob Dillingham role. Now, if you had asked me this question on August 30th or October 1st, I probably have a different answer on each of those days, right? Because before the Cat trade, Rob Dillingham was going to have a role on this roster. He was going to be, even if he was the 9th guy, he was going to play the role of bench catalyst. They were going to hand him this role. They didn't trade up for no reason, right? Yes, there's the point guard of the future thing, and that's probably still what ends up happening, or at least that's what the goal is. But he was going to have a role on opening night. It was either him or Terrence Shannon. And given recent Chris Finch comments, maybe it was TJ Shannon, and they were just going to roll, hey, Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Anthony Edwards are going to split backup point guard minutes behind Mike Conley. TJ Shannon may, play the kind of wreak havoc guy off the bench and play, generate some offense. That could have been where they ended up, sure. But I would have told you on August 30th, my thought would have been it's probably Rob Dillingham. October 1st, I was less confident about that because the acquisition of Dante DiVincenzo in late September, along with Julius Randle and the Karl-Anthony Towns trade. I thought, like, hey, Dillingham, 10th guy, probably doesn't play. I didn't think he'd be playing like opening night, but I thought he would get a shot some games to be the 10th guy. That never really happened. He ultimately got pressed into duty when there were injuries to others, and it was a complete roller coaster. There were moments where he looked completely lost in every bit the 160-pound, 19-year-old out there with a bunch of grown men. And other times where it was like, okay, I can see Lou Williams. Like, that's what this is. This is, there's some Allen Iverson there, right? Like there's those moments where you feel that way about his game. It absolutely has ran the gamut to this point. But I think the headline that would have surprised the fall version of myself is just the overall lack of opportunity that he's gotten and the fact that he's just simply not in the rotation at the moment. And I guess you could take that another step further. I'm going to mention Jalen Clark here in a minute, but that both Jalen Clark and TJ Shannon are getting rotation minutes, albeit very rotation is pretty generous, but they're seeing the floor and non-garbage time minutes, we'll call it that, ahead of Rob Dillingham. That would have been a complete shock to me, especially the Jalen Clark piece. Coming off the Achilles, second-round pick, not this year, but last year, with no pro basketball experience before this fall. So basically the same boat in that regard. I mean, obviously he was with the team last year, the facility and stuff, but, I would have never thought he'd play more than Rob Dillingham. But now, I mean, Dillingham's played in 40 games, but at the moment, Jalen Clark is actually only Rob Dillingham's 9th on the team in minutes played, total minutes played this year. Jalen Clark is 10th. He's 122 minutes behind him, but he's 10th. And in the games that Jalen Clark has played, he's averaged 15 minutes a game. Dillingham's averaged only 12 minutes a game. More garbage time for Dillingham than actual rotation minutes this year. I think the body of work, a small body of work, but what we've seen so far from Dillingham is still encouraging. I think the court vision, the assist rate, some of the passes he's made. I mean, he's got an assist rate of 30%, which is bonkers. Like, it's really good. Not bonkers. It's really good. I mean, it's best on the team. Obviously, playing 40 games in less than 500 minutes, it's not a big number, or it's not a big sample. But the turnovers have come along with it, right? Like, he's got a 19% turnover rate, which is highest of anybody that plays real minutes. Only Joe Ingles has a higher one, and he's only played 100 minutes this year, basically. So the turnover rate and the assist rate are both kind of what you'd expect, and I think encouraging from the assist rate side. The 3-point shooting has been erratic. The shot selection, also erratic. The defense, I actually think a little bit better than I expected it to be, but there's still been Olay moments. There's been moments where he's been overpowered, but still a little bit better than I expected. So I think the surprise is just the lack of opportunity he's gotten. And I don't blame Finch for it in the fall. I think there's maybe been some moments recently that you could have gone to him. There were a couple games in the middle there. It was the Boston game, maybe. There was a game in there where I felt like he didn't play enough. Or maybe it was coming out of the Boston game. He played well against Boston, I think. And then the game after that, he should have gotten more run, I think it was, in maybe January. All that to say, the role has been surprising, or the lack thereof, I guess. Another leaning negative one I'll hit quickly is the Rudy Gobert rebounding regression. Maybe shouldn't be that surprising given that he's now 32, but he, of course, just signed the extension. We know he's had, at least recently, some back issues, but overall for the season, Rudy Gobert, he certainly regressed in, the stats have gone down in certain areas. Yes. But the rebound rate being a career low by 4%, or at least, I guess the 17-18 season, he had a weirdly low rebound rate. So, but still lowest of his career, 1.5 points below that. But then we're talking 3 points below his next lowest, going all the way back like 9 years. A really, really low rebound rate for Rudy Gobert. And that's been very strange. I think it started to trend in the right direction. I don't know if it was, coming out of the Olympics and he had the finger injury in the Olympics and some stuff early in the season. I don't know. That's been weird. And it's a little worrisome moving forward with the extension. I think he's still going to be impactful defensively for a long time, but I think we're starting to see some overall kind of slowdown from Rudy. That I was not expecting from a rebounding standpoint this year. I was not expecting that to slip, and hopefully it's something of an aberration. And there's some, other factors there that are causing that, and maybe it's not a thing to worry about, but that surprised me. That's what the segment is. It surprised me. The last thing would be Jalen Clark cracking the rotation. We talked about this in the context of Rob Dillingham already. And I love Jalen Clark. I've done, if you're a regular listener, I've done lots of segments on Jalen Clark. I reread my scouting report from him after they drafted him a year and a half ago, a few weeks ago. And the cliff notes are, I thought he was an NBA level, like elite point of attack defender already as being drafted in the wake of the Achilles tear. But remember, he won the Naismith Outstanding Defender Award. Is that what it's called? I think it's the Naismith Award in 22-23 before tearing the Achilles. I had him listed as a smaller, less athletic, but more polished Josh Minott. In other words, nose for the ball, can be point of attack defender in the NBA today if he had, he hadn't had the Achilles injury. The offense to me has been better than I expected. Limited, obviously, but still much better than I expected. I thought that would be prohibitive for him to get NBA minutes, and especially when he didn't play a minute last year. G League, NBA, barely played in practice toward the end of the regular season last year. And now he got some G League run in the fall, and here he is, like a rotation guy. He's a legit lockdown defender, and they just signed him to a guaranteed deal, the rest of this year, next season at a vet minimum, or the technically a vet minimum, but the minimum contract. And, obviously, congrats to Jalen Clark. We talked about that when he signed it a couple weeks ago. But a huge get for Minnesota, and for him to be playing rotation minutes ahead of Rob Dillingham, and actually technically ahead of TJ Shannon, like, it's just remarkable. Like, he's played more, 60 more minutes than TJ Shannon to this point already. A second round pick with a torn Achilles from a year and a half ago, playing over 2 first round picks from this year. Can't make that stuff up. It's crazy. All right. I've got one quick team thing. I'll reduce this to one thing, which maybe shouldn't be a surprise, but I'll hit that, and then we'll roll into the Wolves Nuggets preview. We'll do that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Skims. When I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard a ton about their quality from friends and family, so I had to give it a try. And let me tell you, it lives up to the hype. I've had issues with underwear. Who hasn't? Like, it's a sensitive thing. You got to get it right. It's got to fit right. It's got to be comfortable. Maybe it's the right style. Skims changed all that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. I tried the Skims Stretch 5-inch boxer brief. I prefer the longer boxer briefs. And, I'm hooked. I think they're super comfortable. I'm moderately active, coaching sports, playing with the kids, etc., working out occasionally, walking sometimes for my day job, up and down and the whole thing. And they're very comfortable. They move with you. They never lose their shape. They stay in place all day. Whether you're just running errands or you're just, lounge around the house on the weekend, they're the most comfortable and reliable underwear that you'll find. Plus, the lightweight material feels amazing, almost like you're wearing nothing at all. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA and Skims stores. Let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select this show in the drop-down menu that follows. Again, let them know that we sent you by, after placing your order, selecting podcast in the survey and select Locked On in the drop-down menu that follows. Okay. One quick team thing. I'm going to say the offensive rebounding, which is maybe like an obvious thing, but this is a team that was not interested in offensive rebounding the last couple of years. They were very concerned with getting back in transition, and understandably so, as bad as their transition defense had been, going back a couple of years now. But now, like, if you take the body of work from this season, they've got a really impressive turnover rate. That's not been as impressive, although it's trending in the right direction. Offensive rebound rate. So since January 1st, they're 13th in the NBA. 13th in the NBA in offensive rebound rate. Top half. Not at all what you'd expect from a Chris Finch team if you're basing it off the last couple of years. For the season, they're 16th. So they're right there middle of the pack in terms of offensive rebounding. There's a couple of reasons they did it. I don't want to talk about this too much, but they needed easier buckets offensively. That's a big reason for it. Number two, so many teams are leaking back the other way to try and get offensive opportunities in transition that it's like, hey, if we have guys facing the basket, offensive rebounding should be easier anyway. We can see where the shot's coming from. The defender a lot of times is facing the offensive player, so you don't know where the shot's coming from. You can't see where the ricochet is going. It's easier to track a rebound if you're facing the rim as an offensive player. If you rebound 5 and they're leaking 1 or 2 back, it's now 5-on-3 or 5-on-4 with the advantage of facing the rim. And, shoot a lot more threes. There's longer rebounds. There's more intermediate rebounds. Keep it alive on the glass. Give yourself more cracks at it, more bites at the apple. And the Wolves have done exactly that to the tune of 13th highest offensive rebound rate in the league since January 1st, 16th overall this year. And you can lump in with that free throw rate. They're 9th in the league this season in free throw rate, and they're first since January 1st. That shouldn't be surprising given Anthony Edwards and the personnel they have, but given what a challenge it was early this season and last year getting to the line, it's a bit surprising that they've been so proficient over the past 10 weeks or so getting to the line. And that plus the offensive rebound rate, you can point directly at those factors for why they've been a top 10 offense since Jan 1 and 11th overall this season in the NBA. All right. Moving on. Let's talk Wolves Nuggets. Timberwolves have not seen the Nuggets since late January. That was January 25th, I believe. Yeah, January 25th, they beat the Nuggets by 29, a good old-fashioned beatdown. They beat them at home back on November 1st as well by 3 points. Of course, a lot has changed since then, but I thought it was worth bringing both those games up. The last 2 games against Denver are, of course, in Denver, including tonight's game on ESPN, 9 p.m. Central, tip, 8 p.m. local time in Denver. I'll get to the injury report in a second. Rewinding to the fall, Russell Westbrook was coming off the bench back in November. He's starting for them now. The Timberwolves rotation looked similar. Actually, it looked identical to, I think, what we'll see in this game. Joe Ingles did play 5 minutes in that game on November 1st. That won't happen. But otherwise, it's the same, save for Jalen Clark and TJ Shannon. But the top 8 guys are the same for Minnesota. Denver, things have changed quite a bit. We'll talk about that in a moment. But in that game, Ant had 29 points, but it took him 23 shots to do it. He was 7 of 14 on threes. They also got 23, 7, and 6 from Julius Randle and 16 off the bench from Nas on 7 of 10 shooting. Nikhil was a plus 27 in a game that the Wolves won by 3, and Jaden McDaniels was a minus 29. I'd have to go back and watch to see what happened in that one, but thought I'd point that out. Last time around, late January, a lot has changed since then too. This was a blowout. Timberwolves had their full complement of starters. This was after the Dante DiVincenzo injury, but before the Julius injury. Mike Conley was available before the Rudy Gobert injury, obviously, but there was no DiVincenzo. The Wolves blew them out. They got 13 off the bench from Nas, 10 off the bench from Nikhil, and 10 from Rob Dillingham. He was playing rotation minutes in this game. They got 34 on 23 shots plus 9 assists from Anthony Edwards, 21, 7, and 7 from Julius Randle. So across the board, a strong game. 14. Oh, this was the Rudy Gobert, 14 points, 14 rebound, 5 assists, 4 steal game. Somehow 4 steal, no block game with 5 assists and no turnovers for Rudy Gobert. Just a complete domination. The Wolves were up 11 at halftime. They were up 18 going to the fourth quarter and then held Denver to 13 points in the fourth quarter. The story in this game was controlling the offensive glass, as we just talked about for the season and since Jan 1, especially for Minnesota. 18 offensive rebounds for the Wolves. Julius Randle had 5. Rudy Gobert had 4 in this game. And that was really the story. They also outshot Denver from outside the arc, 47% to Denver's 34%. So scoring an extra 9 points there. And Denver was 7 of 13 from the free throw line in this game. Keys overall, Denver's an outstanding offensive team. I should mention the injury report. Aaron Gordon is doubtful. He missed their last game. I think it's a calf injury. That's a big deal. He is obviously a super important piece for them. They did just beat OKC, though, last time out by 13 in OKC with no Aaron Gordon. So their starting lineup was their normal starters plus Christian Brown. So Russell Westbrook now for them is a regular starter. Westbrook, Murray, Nikola Jokic, Michael Porter Jr., and Christian Brown. And then they only had 3 guys play off the bench. This was a Chris Finch-esque rotation. 8 guys. Jalen Pickett, Peyton Watson, and Zeke Naji, Minneapolis native, are the only players that played off the bench for Denver. They only had 3 guys play more than 15 minutes in this game. So, without Aaron Gordon, that really matters. I'm curious what the defensive strategy is for them. They've kind of, like, the Wolves have tried some different stuff against Denver. I think most likely Julius Randle is going to guard Jokic, and they let Rudy roam. They could also choose to have Jaden McDaniels roam. The Jalen Clark emergence, plus obviously the presence of Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Anthony Edwards and all the other guys that can defend. Like, maybe they let Jaden roam and they try putting Rudy on Jokic again, and Jaden is the weak side defender that comes to help. That's a possibility. I do think it's more likely that we see Randle try and guard Jokic the majority of the time. Not that won't get mixed up a little bit. I'm curious to see how Denver, like what Denver did to SGA toward the end of the game against the Thunder, is exactly what the Wolves did to SGA, which was send two at the ball and make somebody else beat them. Denver may try that with Minnesota. But I think Julius Randle and apparently now Jaden McDaniels as kind of secondary scorers are more potent than at least what we saw from Lou Dort and Chet Holmgren. I guess Holmgren didn't play in that game, the Wolves game against OKC, but he wasn't good against Denver the other night. He had like 8 points. And J-Dub, Jalen Williams, at least in the Wolves game, was not good. Late when the Wolves were putting two on the ball against SGA. So I think the Nuggets may try that strategy like a lot of teams do against Ant, but the Wolves have become so much better at ball movement. Ant's been making quicker decisions, and the supporting cast has been so much better scoring the ball that I think the Wolves can handle that. I think that'll be okay if Denver does that. Again, Denver's a really good offense, a poor defense, but there's nothing that they do like dramatically poorly on the defensive end of the floor. It's just kind of like, if you look at the four factors, they don't force turnovers, but they're kind of middle of the pack everywhere else. Teams just kind of, I think it's scoring in the paint. It's just making open shots. Like, they've had a little bit of bad luck there, but personnel wise, especially without Aaron Gordon, I just don't know who guards the combination of Ant, Julius Randle. I mentioned McDaniels, Naz Reid. The Wolves have a lot of weapons, and the offense is trending in the right direction. I think, this is a toss-up for me. I think the Wolves have a real shot to win in Denver at altitude on Wednesday night. Nuggets coming off a big win over OKC. Of course, Denver always, they should get up for Minnesota games because Minnesota's had their number going back to the playoffs last year, but it'll be a fun one for sure. Live postcast following the game with Jack and Luke over at Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. And then that audio will be right here on this feed, Locked On Wolves, the audio feed. I'll be back on Thursday with the Locked On Wolves post-game podcast will be posted Thursday morning. I will actually be hosting the postcast Friday night following Wolves. Who do they even play Friday night? I should know this. But anyway, I'll be hosting the postcast on Friday night. But after tonight's game, you'll get Jack and Luke on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Then I'll be back Thursday with the post-game podcast. Friday night's game, because it's going to bug me now, is Orlando. So I'll be doing the postcast after that one. All right. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. Of course, you can also subscribe to the Locked On Wolves daily email newsletter at LockedOnDaily.com. One-stop shop for all things Wolves and all things NBA, delivered directly to your inbox daily, Monday through Friday at LockedOnDaily.com. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.